Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Epic Podcast. It's me, Edric, again. And as you can see, we are doing face-to-face. So thank goodness we are back. And I've got here Rebecca Kane, who is the founder of the company by the name of Evexia, who is very much about mental fitness. So first off, Rebecca, thanks for joining us and graciously taking time out to do this and having this chat. Now, Evexia, did I get that right?
Yes, so it's Evexia Collective. The name actually comes from Greek. So Evexia means well-being in Greek. And we wanted a name that wasn't too kind of mental healthy on the surface, so that it didn't put people off and make people think of negative sides of mental health. Because often when you talk about mental health, people go, if I don't suffer from a mental health issue, therefore this thing isn't for me and I shouldn't engage with it.
Right.
And actually we're trying to be more proactive and positive about mental health, because ultimately we all have minds, right? So we all have mental health. Sometimes it's really great, sometimes it's not so great, and we should all be learning to look after our brains and our mental health all the time. So we're trying to talk about mental health in a much more positive way, and so we didn't want something that sounded too kind of negative or scary. And so we sort of chose a name that was a little bit sort of mysterious for that reason. I also just think it sounds really cool, Evexia Collective.
Yeah, it is.
Right?
It is. It's almost like one of those space exploring video games, if you want to call it that. But this whole thing about mental fitness, right? Now, I remember when we briefly talked about it previously when we first met. And funny story for whoever's been listening so far, you probably hear that about the time that I got scammed, right? And I talked about that. And it just so happens, it brought us good fortune that I got to meet Rebecca at the scam event.
Yeah.
So it's the strangest thing, right? We got our tickets and everything, and it was in euros. Again, just to recap.
Suspicious.
Very, very suspicious. So please don't get scammed by euro stuff in Singapore, right? The second thing is when we got there, first thing we went over there, asked, hey, does this place have this particular event, right, over at Emerald Hill? Said, nope, not happening. We did not
Never
have such
heard
an
of
event.
Yeah.
Nope. And eventually I got sick of waiting, right? So I said, okay, if they're not coming, I went with one of my colleagues, Kelly, as well. And then we just said, okay, we're just going to have a good time, whoever comes, and we're going to do a networking event of our own. And here we are.
Yeah, we had a great evening in the end. I think I'd come back a couple of times to that venue and asked the same question and was walking around looking a bit lost. And Edric sort of said, hi, are you here for this event? We're going to have a drink anyway. So, yeah, had a good fun evening anyway.
Yeah, it was. And, when you talked about this, your business, right, how you're setting it up and the whole thing about mental fitness, it was definitely very intriguing because we talk about the gym. You had mentioned, there's a gym for your body. There's a gym for maybe your spirit when you do yoga and things like that. But there's no gym for your brain. Or most of the time, we think, mental gymnastics is like math and science and everything STEM. But yours, on the other hand, is very different. Could you tell us a bit more?
Yeah, so it's exactly that premise, right? There's a gym, we work out our body, we look after our body in other ways. We go to the doctor, or I've actually just been to the dentist this morning. We're checking up, we're keeping an eye on our physical health, but we just don't do the same for our minds and our brain health until it gets really bad. And it's only when we're really suffering or, there's a particular incident and we really struggle with our mental health, do we actually pay any attention to it? And arguably, that's a bit late. It's not too late. You can get better. But it's much, much harder work. Whereas if we were just looking after our brains and our minds and how we're feeling on a more regular basis, more proactively and preventatively, we'd never get to that point of crisis or sort of burnout or whatever it might be. And ultimately, we'd just feel happier and better. And we're going to be better at all aspects of life, whether that's personal or professional. We're going to be a better friend, a better parent, a better colleague, a better employee. These are all things that I think we all want to have and be, but we don't actually give ourselves a chance to do that. And so that's really where the concept of the business came about is, yes, this gym concept, this mental mind gym idea, and that's kind of evolved since into sort of what we do for Evexia Collective.
Right. And I noticed, you did a beta test on the app. So for those who are very interested, I'm going to leave the QR code on the screen afterwards, as well as a link in the description. Try it out. Give your feedback as well. The way that it came about, right? If you've used, I mean, I've tested the app out. It's almost like a friend to remind you about what's important, how you're feeling, and just getting a gauge of what you're doing. And what I thought was really cool is even in a corporate setting, we're looking at not just the mental side of things, but the physical side. And physical, by physical, it also means your hormones, your sexual energy, and things like that. So it covers 360 of everything. I mean, what led you down this particular rabbit hole, though?
So I guess what started me on this journey was I worked in investment banking in London for 8 years, a traditionally very high stress industry. And, you know, shock horror, I suffered from stress myself. And when I kind of got myself into a better place and I looked around me, I could see every single one of my colleagues who are incredibly intelligent, hardworking, motivated, driven people, all exhibiting signs of stress and various kind of symptoms related to that. And I just thought, why on earth are we not doing something about this? So along with a colleague, I founded a mental health network, which kind of acted like an internal organisation to the wider organisation. So sort of acted like a startup. And we were focused on improving awareness for mental health issues and support for employees. And it actually became a really big part of that corporate culture and significantly changed the culture. It really gave people different avenues to learn about their minds, to take steps to improve it. And we were able to provide more support for employees. As part of that, I started doing public speaking in London around mental health in banking and various different engagements like that. I happened to sort of separately leave in 2020 to do an MBA, which was something I'd always wanted to do. And on graduating from that MBA, when I was thinking, right, what do I want to do now? Do I want to go back into finance? Do I want to do something else? It just kind of seemed obvious what I needed to do, and that was to start my own business. It's something that I'd always been interested in, and it was obvious what I wanted to start that business in because this was a personal passion of mine. Whilst I hadn't sort of worked in that industry directly, I had working experience in delivering solutions for corporates, and I could see from that side some of the gaps and some of the issues that weren't being addressed. That, you know, when I was working in the banking and working with providers, the stuff that wasn't being delivered or needs that weren't being met. So yeah, I started Evexia Collective, and, you know, we're coming up to a year old at the moment, and that journey has, you know, taken us down many interesting ways. The idea has evolved and matured as we progress, and I'm sure it will continue to do so as we, you know, test hypotheses out with customers and corporate customers and individual customers. One of the things I wanted to touch on that you kind of mentioned there is there are these physical aspects of mental health as well as the mental aspects. And we talk about mental and physical as these separate things. And I know I did the same a moment ago when I was talking about, you know, physical gyms versus mental gyms, etc. But ultimately, they're not separate. They're so interlinked. The more and more you look into this, I think it's absolutely fascinating. The more you learn, there's this really deep connection between that physical and mental. So we know that physical health issues, for example, can often result in mental health issues. You know, if you're ill for a very long period of time or something happens to you major physically, quite often that can result in you feeling low or depression, anxiety, health anxiety, etc. But it's fascinating to know that mental health issues often lead to physical health issues as well. And a lot of the physical ailments we get on a day-to-day basis, be it migraines, musculoskeletal issues, sometimes even heart issues, etc., actually the root cause is mental health or stress. So the spend in Singapore alone, you know, but also globally, of health issues that actually the root cause ends up being stress, even though it's maybe demonstrating itself physically, is absolutely huge. And it's a massive burden to medical sort of facilities in the environment here and globally. And it's something that we don't address the root cause enough. We go, oh, there's a physical symptom, let's fix that physical symptom. We don't really get to the underlying cause. And so those things go on to continue to be issues for people.
Okay. And all this research, how long? Basically, what I would like to get is with all this research that's going around and all the information that you're able to collect, how has that contributed to developing the app in itself?
So our kind of ethos is scientific, not spiritual. That's because there are loads of, as you mentioned earlier, loads of brilliant kind of spiritual solutions out there, things for the soul. There's lots of yoga and meditations and things like that. They're brilliant, and we're not trying to take that away or compete with that. What we're trying to do is design a solution that works for people that maybe don't like that stuff. And that's kind of where it works for us, working with corporates. Where perhaps somebody feels a little bit more logic or data driven rather than heart, soul, mind driven. And so that's kind of how we've developed our solution. And that's where a lot of the scientific research does go into it. We have a brilliant board of advisors with medical and scientific advisors, a neuroscientist, researcher and psychiatrist, etc., who help advise us on the science side. They're heavily involved in guiding our solutions and helping develop those solutions so that they are medically and scientifically backed. And yeah, I mean, the whole app is really driven by science and by data. So we can understand, I guess, just give a bit more of an introduction to the app. The app helps you to measure your mental fitness, and then it shows you your own data back at you with sort of a dashboard. So you can start to see your score, or the breakdown of score, what that means for you, and how that score changes over time. So by seeing your own data, it helps you understand your mind a little bit better. It helps to see what your triggers might be, whether that's personal or professional, and how you react to different scenarios. And then we can help improve your mental fitness better. And it's really personal. So you talked about it being a bit more like a friend that kind of reminds you these things. That's because we've designed it to be really personal and to be based on individual profiles and how their brain works, and then to make recommendations based on their profile. And so it kind of really, it's that data, that science kind of angle that we've built the whole design of the app on.
Right. And for those who are actually looking to start businesses, right, especially in the tech side of things, now you don't have, I remember we talked about this, you don't have a background in tech, and you were able to bring the team together and also still lead that vision. Now, my question is, why are we, or at least why is Evexia Collective moving toward targeting corporate as compared to the regular consumer when it comes to all these wellness apps?
It's a really good question. So my experience is in the corporate space. So I think there's one angle there. Secondly, there is still a big stigma in Singapore and across Asia around mental health. So that's a barrier we have to come up against. And because the way that our business is designed is it's more around that positive upside of mental health, i.e. trying to improve your brain, trying to feel better, more focused, more creative, more, better team worker, a better team leader, all these things. We felt that working with businesses with that angle would help circumvent some of the negatives. We're not talking about trying to recover from pathology or mental health issues. We're talking about we all have brains. Let's all try and improve our brains and be better employees, but also better family members, better parents, etc., better friends. So we felt that angle working with businesses would really help us. And yeah, like I say, it's my personal experience. It's also where there's a big problem, right? We hear a lot today around quiet quitting or actual quitting, right? The job market has never been so sort of turbulent, and people are looking for more from their work than just a paycheck at the end of the day. And businesses are desperately searching for solutions on what to give their employees that actually works and makes their life better as an employee, but also makes the business's life better. And I think we have a solution to that, right? It's about providing additional support for employees, but also giving the business that visibility over how their employees are doing at an aggregate level. So nothing that, can drill down to an individual level, nothing personally identifiable, but the business can say, how are my teams doing, and where do some teams need a bit more support over others during different times, month end, the finance team might need a little bit more support, etc. And how can I as a business recognize when my employees need that support and give them the support that works for them? And that's the solution that we are giving to a corporate at the same time as giving employees something that they enjoy and that helps them to feel better on a day-to-day basis.
It's very interesting. With the work that we do in the leadership development space as well, a big part of it is understanding every individual within our teams, right? So the app is able to do that. And I realized that one of the things that is in there comes across as things like your age group, your gender as well. So in this case, of course, biologically speaking, is the male and the female side of things. Now, when it comes to mental wellness, I'd love to tap into the research for this. Has there been big differences in the stressors for males and females? And does that actually, I would say, contribute to how the data is being interpreted as well, or analyzed?
So I can't talk so much about the different stressors. One, I'm sure there is a huge amount of research out there, right? And it's not sort of, I unfortunately haven't read it all. But one piece of one sort of area of research that I do know is quite prevalent is more about the way that issues kind of show up in different genders. So quite often men will hide mental health issues a lot more. And so rates of things like unhealthy coping mechanisms, so alcohol, sort of other drugs, things like that.
Keep going.
All those types of things, that tends to be, generally speaking, from a mental health perspective, men tend to go towards those coping mechanisms.
Right.
And then suicide rates are generally very high among men. And this is related to the fact that men will, perhaps that sort of toxic masculinity thing, right? Where men feel like they can't express or share their worries or concerns or emotions, and they bottle it up until it has to come out in some way, shape or form, whether that's a negative coping mechanism or potentially getting to the point of feeling suicidal.
Right.
Women perhaps tend to exhibit more things like anxiety. So anxiety being that kind of more of a panic disorder or something along those lines. So there are general differences in how genders exhibit mental health issues. Obviously, this is a massive generalization. There's plenty of situations that prove to be the other way around. But I'm aware of a lot more research around that side of things. I am not as conscious off the top of my head on research around what stresses there are, but I'm sure there are some differences. It would be interesting to look into, definitely.
Yeah, because I was also thinking, because it's in our DNA, it could be very different. The way that you manage or cope with stress, as what you mentioned, would be very different from myself. I mean, speaking from experience, alcohol's not the healthiest of options, but it's an option, right?
Yeah.
And the reason, I mean, if you listen to people like Jordan Peterson and all that, they talk about it, right? About how alcohol is a form of escape, is inebriation, so that you don't feel that pain, or you just escape for that moment. So all these coping mechanisms is really about escapism, if you wanted to call it that. And the other part of it, I mean, just to talk a little bit about this, was men in general, I really do think, is that no man wants to be seen as weak. So you can't be seen hurting. There's this whole thing as you need to show that you're vulnerable, but as a human being, at the same time, you can't show that you're hurting either, because hurt would be a sign of weakness. But yet, so it kind of becomes this whole triangulation of
paradox.
Things. Yeah.
And you ultimately, I think sometimes you can't really show vulnerability without showing some sort of pain, right? And it becomes very difficult to separate the two and to be able to do that. I think the topic of vulnerability, particularly in leadership and business, is absolutely fascinating. It's really important to be an empathetic leader. You do need to be able to exhibit that vulnerability. But if you're feeling that you also can't express any form of hurt or weakness or pain, then that becomes very, very difficult to navigate. And there are ways of expressing those things in a sort of productive and positive way. There are also ways of expressing it negatively, right? If you're going around the whole time talking about how victimized you feel in sort of all situations, that's not going to be great leadership either. So it is a very fine balance, and it can become really difficult to tread that. And I think that's for men and women. I think the flip side is women can sometimes have their emotions or vulnerability dismissed because people go, oh, they're just being emotional. But actually, that's not necessarily the case. Sometimes that ability to show that vulnerability in a work context is incredibly powerful,
right?
Because it allows other people to empathize and sympathize and connect with you on a different level. And it builds trust. And so as a leader, to have that trust makes a big difference in how you run your organization. So, and easily it can cross over to too much. So it's a very fine line. And I think it's an absolutely fascinating area, which I'm sure for you guys from a leadership perspective have a lot more
It's human dynamics, human behavior, right? So when we look into all of that, it's really about, that individual leader. Everybody's leadership style is different. I mean, let's not even talk about business leaders. Just in the home with your spouse, with your partner, even with your dog or your cat, whatever. Whether you're the alpha or not, how you take care of things, how you address these things. I am trying to be a bit more of a proponent of stoicism. So that we can actually take a step back and really look at the matter as what it is. But again, it doesn't mean that you don't feel the emotion. You just have to be able to address it accordingly and then deal with the matter. So that's why you don't show pain. You don't show so-called that weakness, but yet you're still vulnerable by talking about it first. Being able to mention, yes, this is hurtful. But it is what it is. So the matter that we're talking about right now is this. This is how we can deal with it. Let's move on.
Yeah.
Right? But to some people, it may not come across as stoic. It may come across as, damn, you're cold.
Yeah. Well, I would say even being able to recognize that there is an issue and to express that that's 90% of the battle, right? How you react to that, whether that's an emotional reaction or whether that is more stoic, is a down to individual personality. But being able to say, oh yes, this situation either hurts me or I found difficult, actually expressing that, particularly in a family context to, say, children, is really important. Whereas some people might see stoicism as never even expressing it and just pretending you're just getting on with life and, taking it on the chin. I think it's a very British phrase.
Oh, yes.
Sort of stiff upper lip as well, another one. And that's where it becomes negative. Whereas you're completely right, you can be stoic while still having a healthy coping mechanism, which is still expressing, oh, that was a difficult thing for me, or I, feel hurt by that situation, but this is what it means to me and how I'm going to deal with it, and sort of being positive and learning from something rather than just brushing it aside or ignoring it or not taking that opportunity to express it. I think it's a powerful way of coping with it.
It definitely is. It helps to compartmentalize a lot. I love that old video of how men and women think. It's that men are able to have all the boxes, but women on the other hand have one big box.
So my sister said this to me once, and I think it's a very similar concept, and it really resonates with me. Men's brains are like waffles, where you go down one line, you have a decision, you make a decision, you turn and you go, delicious. But then you turn and then you've made that decision, you move on to the next bit. Women's brains are like spaghetti, where everything's interconnected and you say compartmentalized, right? I think it's quite a male trait in general. Women tend to struggle with compartmentalizing a little bit more. But yeah, women's brains are like spaghetti. Every kind of thought pattern has so many different interconnecting questions and decisions, and then you can go down this thought pattern and it ends up back in a loop again. It always just makes me laugh, that kind of visual imagery, but it's exactly the same kind of concept.
It's true. And I love that because it kind of makes me think as well, between men and women, how can we best tap on that? Because you see, men are able, in general speaking, right? I'm not saying that everybody's like that, but just for discourse, if men are able to compartmentalize and women are able to see everything and everywhere at once, it's like that movie title, right? How do you think that men and women can tap on each other to come up with, proper solutions and actually come to terms with these things?
So I think, and I guess this is where sort of there are some differences between men and women, but like we say, like actually it might even just be personality type, right? And I think this is where, from a team perspective, we know there's huge amounts of evidence that having teams with mixed styles of communication, work styles, personality styles are more productive, more creative, more innovative, all of these things that we want, right? So having a team of all one type of person whether that's a style of thinking, a style of communicating, whatever it is, does not get as far as a team that's got a mixture. So men and women, different personality types, however we want to phrase it, having that mixture and having skills that complement but also are different is only going to be good for a team or for a group of people. So, they say like opposites attract in relationships and things. You can quite often see, whilst you might have many similarities or common interests, having different styles of thinking about things can only bring and enrich your life or your sort of output as whether it's a relationship team or a work team. It only accentuates what you do by having those differences in style. So I think that's where absolutely sort of men and women and different groups and different styles of thinking can complement each other, because you need that. The number of times where I've thought, oh, this particular sort of outcome is the only way to do something, or, I've had a particular thought and somebody comes along and says, oh, have you thought about doing it like this? And you go, no, like that hadn't even occurred to me.
Right.
That enriches me by seeing a different way of thinking about something. So next time I come across a similar problem, I might be a little bit more open to some different ways.
Right.
That's all that comes about through different styles of thinking and communication. It helps enhance everything.
Yeah, the power of diversity, right? Yeah, the important thing is the openness in that. But I think we're digressing from wellness into the communications, but it's all part and parcel of the whole thing,
related,
right?
Yeah.
And now I want to throw you a curveball.
Oh dear.
Okay. There was a recent report that the uber rich are now paying a lot more money to get away from technology for their wellness.
Sure.
So, in the world that we live in, do you really think that technology and people can still coexist in the wellness space?
It's a really good and important question, because we know that technology can contribute to mental health issues if used a lot. I actually was having a conversation with someone the other day. There's a lot of evidence that in children, for example, that prolonged screen use, we know screen use isn't great, right? But we don't always know why. And it's a lot to do with children when their brains are developing. If they're spending a lot of time on screens, that naturally, there's only so many hours in a day, right? The more time you spend on screens, the less time you're spending with face-to-face communication, spending time with parents, friends, whoever it is, siblings. And children, as their brains are developing, a really core part of child psychology development is recognizing facial expressions, which then helps them to develop empathy, and that helps them to communicate better with people. And, it's kind of, they're all building blocks to how we develop as we grow. And so by spending time on screens, you're reducing that time that they spend understanding facial expressions and then building empathy. And that can cause later issues because they haven't had that chance to develop those skills.
Right.
And really fundamental skills to being able to sort of exist in a community. So we know that's just a sort of an example, but we know how extreme use of technology can cause issues. It can sort of short circuit the brain. If you're gaming all the time or you're on your phone, you get these dopamine hits which make you slightly addicted to it. That's how kind of social media is so addictive as well. And it short circuits the brain because it makes you want to do it more and more and more, but actually it kind of limits your brain and your development from that perspective. So yes, we do need to and want to get away from technology in many ways. But at the same time, technology does give us so much. It makes us, it gives us so much more information. It gives us access to things at a much quicker rate. And it enhances our lives so much. But we need to have that balance. And that's where building a well-being or a mental fitness solution in technology, we've got to strike that balance, because we don't want to get people even more addicted to their phones, because that's ultimately not going to help them. And that's where some of the resources and solutions that we offer actually are about almost moving away from the phone. Yes, some of it you have to engage with the phone just to get the information, but we do offer things like walking meditations and a number of different things. And we encourage that you take a screen break as well.
Yeah.
So I think there are ways of building in that screen-free or technology-free time within the context of technology.
Right.
the benefit of having something on a mobile app is that it's in your pocket. You've got it whenever you want, and it becomes that friend that sort of is there for you. But it can't become a friend too literally, because then you don't connect with other people. And we know that real, genuine, good quality human connections is a massive part of mental health as well. So these tools can improve our lives in many ways, but I think it's getting that balance between making sure we don't spend our whole lives and live our whole lives through these tools. And sometimes those tools can be reminders for that, to take a break or to do something different. And it's important to kind of strike that balance whilst we, you know, from a technology firm perspective, we want you to use our tool. From a human perspective, we want you to also have a break. So it's trying to strike that balance to make sure we're giving people actual things that really help their brain, rather than just trying to get them addicted in that social media sense, where actually we just want them using it more.
Yeah, absolutely. It's technology is it's neutral, right? It's how you use it.
Exactly.
It's the same thing. I think the approach you're taking is exactly the same thing as a doctor. If you come to me, I'll try and help you out, give you what you need, and I hope I never have to see you again. Right? So the idea in the long, or at least the long game or the long tail game, is that you don't want people to use it anymore because they're so self-sufficient.
Yeah. I mean, yes and no, because the way that we're completely, if someone doesn't need to think about these things because they've built it into their life so much that they don't need the tool to remind them, then that is a win. But the way we're thinking about it is that we're not just trying to get you from, you know, -10 of negative mental health to 0, which is what a lot of mental health tools and solutions are about, right? They're just trying to get you back to neutral. We're trying to get you up to +10 and keep you there. And that requires regular practice, right? In the same way that, you know, if you're trying to lift really heavy weights, if you don't continue to practice and to train, you're going to lose that ability. Same with the brain. The brain is kind of how we're feeling is moving around all the time. And if you don't keep an eye and look after that, it will move down towards negative at stressful periods of life. So we want you to regularly engage with these exercises and activities. And we offer a number of different solutions for different people that work in that way. Some of them are about disengaging from tech. Some are about engaging with tech in a different way. Ideally, if someone can build these into their life so naturally that they actually don't need that reminder or that tool to work with on it, and they start using these things on a regular basis so that they're keeping their mind and their mental fitness in that really positive space all the time, then that's great. Absolutely. You know, you don't need to use the tool anymore. The problem is that we don't tend to do that. We don't tend to remember to do these things, especially when life gets busy, right? And that's where the tool can be really helpful to act as that kind of little pal that's nudging you to go, hey, did you check in today? Did you think about how you're feeling and doing, and did you maybe do a little breathing exercise or something to help? Right.
It's like going for rehab, and then after that getting a personal trainer or a coach.
It's that kind of coaching, personal training aspect of mental fitness that we're working on. We're trying to keep you in that positive space. We're not about treating mental health issues, because you do need medical intervention in that instance. You know, if you have a mental health issue, you need to speak to your doctor. And there are, you know, so many different ways of treating it out there. And we're not trying to change that. We're trying to stop people getting to that point where they need to go see a doctor, and work with people to regularly and consistently improve their brain and mind health. Right.
You mentioned earlier on walking meditation. Now, how does somebody walk and meditate? I mean, to me, that was spacing out, but it's not the same thing, is it?
No. So we've actually developed as part of our organisation some really active walking meditations, which we offer here in Singapore. They're on ClassPass or can be booked directly through us. And they're actually also delivered through the app as well, through sort of audio things where you can plug your headphones in and go for a walk and listen along and do the activities. They're not like traditional meditations when you think of going into a room and emptying your mind and sitting sort of in silence. They're not like that. They're very active and engaging, where we give you little mental exercises as you walk around to get your brain into that same meditative state, to really relax you and to start to kind of engage different parts of the brain to kind of practice different
How
skills.
does that work? Of course, don't do it now because everybody's gonna like zone out. But like, what are the questions that would be asked if, let's say, for example, somebody needed it right now?
So I did a meditation for a client yesterday. It was about focus.
Okay.
And we do specific exercises about the five senses where we're walking along, and I'll ask you to try and disengage your other senses, but to just use your ears and just listen to the nature around you and the sounds that you can hear. And as we walk around, I'll ask you questions such as, are there any sounds that surprise you? Are there any sounds that bring back a memory? Are there any sounds that you wouldn't normally give yourself a chance to listen to that you might sort of block out? And I'll just ask questions that get you kind of thinking and engaging your brain. You're not kind of blanking it out, but you're focusing on a particular thing, and you're seeing how that makes you feel, and you're engaging with that. That's one example. We do a number of different mental activities like that. But I call it's like an active meditation. It's not about switching off or zoning out. It's about taking time. I use a lot of mindfulness techniques, right? Taking time to be present in that moment right then and there, not thinking about what you were doing before or what you're doing next, which we spend so much of our time sort of subconsciously thinking about. But it's just about engaging in that present moment and actively thinking about that present moment in different ways.
And what does that do to an individual? Because I don't know how other people see it, but I understand how it goes. But in your professional opinion, what does it do for somebody?
I mean, I am not a psychiatrist or psychologist, so I can't say from that angle. But
you're a professional meditation analyst.
I am a meditation practitioner, absolutely. What it does is it helps us reduce stress. So a lot of these techniques, there's a stress hormone called cortisol that sort of runs through the body when we're stressed. And it's a great hormone. It helps us focus. It helps us deliver what we need to deliver. Keeps us alert and all these great things. But when we are in chronic stress, we never allow that hormone to kind of decrease in our body and to allow ourselves to relax. And that's where chronic stress becomes a problem. And it's that kind of feeling of always being on and being a bit agitated, not being able to relax. Doing some of these techniques starts to get that hormone to kind of go down and to relax into the moment so that we are able to take a breather, allow our mind to just unwind, and allow our body to unwind as well. And it's more effective in many ways than just saying empty your mind or just go and relax, because when you're in that agitated state, you can't.
Yeah.
Right? It's just not possible to just switch it off. You'll be thinking, oh God, I've got to go pick up the kids later, and I've got to go, oh, what am I making for dinner, and what do I need to do? Or, oh, I haven't delivered that project, oh, that deadline, whatever it is, your brain is just whirring all the time. This allows you to distract that part of your brain, that kind of logical sort of executive system that runs your brain. It allows you to distract it and to engage a part of your brain that is more about slightly kind of mind wandering and daydreaming and things like that, which helps you relax and brings about a sense of calm and de-stresses you. And it allows you to do that in a way that works for people that maybe find it harder otherwise. So yeah, that's kind of the main thing. And we also practice different techniques that might help practice your focus or practice re-energizing yourself, and how you can create energy and motivation and passion in your sort of day-to-day life, as well as that de-stressing and that calmness.
Right. And because I love freebies, and I would love to share them with others as well, there are a couple of things in your app that will help in terms of the mindfulness exercises and the wellness exercises to check in with yourself. Could you share a couple of them so that whoever walks away listening to this can definitely use it, daily?
So there's a really simple one, which I love to tell people, which comes from the study of positive psychology, which is called sort of daily gratitude. And you can do it every day. You can do it when you wake up, or you can do it, it's particularly powerful when you go to sleep. And I think that's where a lot of the research has been done. Where every day you think about 3 things that you are grateful for. So let's say you do it before you go to sleep. You have to think about 3 things. They can be really big, or they can be absolutely minuscule if you're struggling. But there's always got to be 3 things that you can find in your day. Even if you've had the worst day ever, it might just be, I really enjoyed the feeling of the sunshine on my skin when I walked to the office. Or oh, I made it on time today, and I didn't feel stressed when I arrived at work. Whatever it is, it can be really minuscule or it can be really big. But think of 3 things that went well or that you feel grateful for today, just before you go to sleep, so that this is kind of your last conscious thought where possible. And then it kind of helps to rewire the brain a little bit as you sleep. So, as we sleep, we know that our brain is doing all this sort of work in the background and sort of creating new neural pathways and doing all this connecting and things like that. So having that as your last conscious thought can really positively leave your brain kind of wearing over stuff at night, rather than quite often when we're stressed or anxious, we think about the negative. What do we have to do next day? What am I stressed about? If you end on that positive note, you're more likely to wake up feeling more positive. And it's been proven to just give you more joy in life and to make you feel happier in life by regularly expressing gratitude and thinking about what you're grateful for. So that's a really easy, quick technique that doesn't take any time out of your day that I always recommend people do. Practice it regularly. It's a really good one to practice with kids as well, is to sort of every day talk to your kids about what do you feel grateful for? What do you feel happy about right now? And to get them sort of thinking about that and talking about it. Because we so easily express what we're feeling negative about, right? But we don't spend the time talking about the positives. So yeah, that would be one. Another thing that is really powerful and is really hard to do, and I absolutely do not do this perfectly, is we are our own worst critic. We are brutal to ourselves. We're always wanting ourselves to do better, to do more, to improve, to do faster, whatever it is. And we talk to ourselves in a really nasty way sometimes. So whenever you find yourself criticizing yourself or thinking, oh, I should have done it like this, or, those should or wish I could statements that we kind of tell ourselves, stop yourself. First of all, try and start noticing when you do that. And then catch yourself when you're doing it and try and rephrase what you're saying to yourself in a way you would speak to a friend if they came to you and said that. So think if your friend sat down to you and said, oh, I'm so annoyed because I don't know, I'm trying to think of an example here. Like I had that meeting with my boss and I didn't really express myself well enough in the way I want to, for example. Oh, I'm such an idiot. I'm a moron. I just can't believe my boss is never going to understand what I mean. I'm such an idiot. If somebody came to you and said that, you'd be like, hey, hang on. You're not an idiot. Mm-hmm. You just struggled to get what you wanted to say out in that moment. There'll be another opportunity. Maybe we can sit and prepare a little bit, but come on, don't be so hard on yourself. You'd be almost a bit shocked that someone was talking to themselves like that. Yeah. So when you're talking to yourself like that,
we're super judgy.
Yeah. Talk to yourself like you would talk to a friend. Because we're so much nicer to other people than we are to ourselves. So that's another tip that is actually really hard because we all do it, right? Especially people that are high achievers, right? And do well at work and want to do well at work, is we constantly push ourselves for more and nothing's ever good enough. Just take a moment, catch yourself when you're doing that and say, hey, how would I speak to a friend or a loved one about this topic? And you can usually find more of a positive in it than just that kind of beating yourself up, because actually beating yourself up, whilst we think it triggers you to go on and do better, it actually has more of a negative impact than we realise. Whereas if you put a positive slant of like, oh yeah, okay, that conversation didn't go as well as it could, but what could I have said so that next time I make sure I get my message across, you're going to learn so much more from thinking about it in that positive way rather than just going, oh, I'm an idiot.
So daily conversations with yourself as always, right? Yeah, so it's that whole angel and devil thing, right?
Yeah.
One is saying all these mean things to yourself, which the weirdest thing is, for me as a guy, it happens all the time. I speak about this very openly as well, that many times I'm just saying things to myself that are extremely self-deprecating, right? But when times are difficult, those are the things that fuel me, that keep pushing me, because by saying you're how can you be so weak, right? It's like you kind of just suck it up and just do it and you just go. So it's a very strange thing that internal dialogue it can be so powerful, and yet it can also be so damaging at the same time.
Yeah.
It's that But the whole gratitude thing every day, I think that's fantastic. To be thankful, to find something to be thankful for. And the greatest thing is, when you talk to kids about this, like this is great. I love it, because if you talk to your kid about what they're grateful for, they just go like pizza and ice cream, McDonald's and French fries or something.
How much joy do they get out of just the little things, right?
Yeah, correct. And that's the thing. So I love that whole idea that we should live our lives backwards, right? That when you're young, you have the wisdom of someone who's that old, so you know how you're going to plan your life. You know what's the end of it. When you reach your middle age, you're there working as you do, right? Doing what you need to do. But because you've already got a plan ahead, it's so fantastic. You know exactly what you're supposed to do, and you've got the knowledge and the ethic to do it. The last one, when you're closer to the tail end of your life, you're playful and joyful like a child.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the beauty and the wisdom in that thinking about being intentional and being present and enjoying the little things along the way.
Yeah, one of the things in one of my meditations that I really enjoy doing is children explore the world in such a different way to us. So even as simple as touch, right?
Mm-hmm.
We lose that sort of focus on exploring the world by touching it at some point as adults, and we don't go around sort of, touching all the surfaces and stuff. But actually, sometimes if you just take a minute and you do that and you explore the world through that sense of touch, whether it's your hands or your feet on the ground and your body and how it feels, and we re-engage with that part of our brain, it's a really great way to explore the world. So I do it on one of the walks where we're walking through the jungle, and it's just touching some of the leaves and the trees and just exploring that world and seeing how different textures feel different and seeing if anything surprises us. It's really enjoyable, and it makes you, appreciate stuff in a way that we don't give ourselves time to in our sort of busy adult worlds. And it is about that. It's like reconnecting with the way we explore the world as children, that has kind of wonder and beauty in it.
Right. Disclaimer, we're not endorsing going around to the park and touching people either, randomly. Please don't do that. Touch the leaves, touch the floor, whatever. Just don't start randomly touching people, all right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. But I'm so glad you clarified that.
It's just got to put it out there, It's like, people who listen are like-minded like myself, and that means they're a little twisted as well. So you got to, you got the light and you got the dark. You got to see both sides. Okay?
Fair, very fair.
Dangerous things. Well, it's been a great chat. Now, at the end of every podcast, right, we always do a quick deep dive with our guests with a quick 10-question rapid fire. All right. So this 10 questions, this 10 questions are there. So are you ready, Rebecca?
Kinda.
Okay. Then let's go. Let's go with the epic questionnaire. Question number 1, the word you love the most.
Innovate.
And one word that you really dislike.
This is just such a cliche, but everyone always says moist. It's a horrible word.
Moist?
Yeah.
Why? What?
It's just not a nice word. It just feels weird.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Conversation for a different day.
Maybe it's not such a cliche then.
Yeah. If you have a conversation, question 3, if you could have a conversation with someone dead or alive, fictional or non-fictional, who would that be?
I love Stephen Fry. I love his voice. It's the most soothing, relaxing voice in the world.
Makes you feel smarter every time you just listen to him.
Yeah, and he's such an intelligent man. Yes. And from a mental health perspective, right? He's bipolar and he has so much to share about his experience. And I think he'd be a fascinating person to have at a dinner party.
Absolutely. But I wouldn't be able to keep up. I think I'd just be sitting there listening all the time.
Just in awe, like...
Absolutely. I mean, the time he talks about rhubarb and cleaning his thing on QI, I'm like, what?
Yeah, I love him. Yes. Yeah, so I think it'd be him.
The best. Absolute the best. I love that. And what do you say to yourself in the mirror every morning?
Oh, going back to the kind of negative self-talk, it's probably more on the negative side.
Wake up, dummy.
Yeah, I struggle to wake up in the morning, so it probably is that. I'd like to say to myself... You've got this.
Okay.
But I probably don't. I'm probably naturally kind of like, oh, come on, hurry up. Get on with it. Move on. So, yeah, there we go.
Yeah. Name one superpower that you'd like to have.
Flying.
It's so common. Why?
Just because it'd be so much faster to get everywhere. It's either that or teleporting. Just being able to cut out the faff of travel. I'm a very kind of like, I want to be moving on to the next thing, like go, next thing. So travel to me is just a waste of time. But then at least with flying, okay, you still have to travel, but it's quicker. And I can imagine there'd be more joy in it. I feel like teleporting, there's not any joy to come from that.
Yeah, it's true.
It's kind of just too quick and...
Because you don't get to see stuff along the way too,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. So I think flying would still give me that. It's just, I can imagine it'd be really fun, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like whizzing through the sky. It'd be great.
True. Okay. Favorite dish to eat?
So this isn't a dish, but my favorite food in the world is sweet corn.
Oh.
I'm obsessed with it. I have it with almost every meal. And I don't know if you are into TikTok at all, or it's on Instagram as well. There's a little song at the moment from this kid that was interviewed at some sort of fair, and he's talking about corn and how it's the best thing in the world. There's a funny little kind of song that loads of people are making TikToks to at the moment about corn and how great it is. And that kid is my spirit animal.
Oh man, I'm so
I'll play
not
it
on
to you
TikTok.
after. I'll
But
show you
anyway,
the video.
it's okay. It's okay. Favorite travel spot, or actually, where's the next place you want to go to?
That is a good question. So I'm British, if you can't tell from my accent. Lived here in Singapore for 2 years. So favorite travel spot has to just be Southeast Asia in general. There's a reason why I came and lived here. Where do I want to go? I went to Vietnam when I was sort of 18, 19. I'm really looking forward to going back and exploring it again, a bit older. Same with Cambodia, actually. And just kind of, exploring those areas. I planned a trip for my dad's 70th birthday, which was last year, which they're going to do this year. So I'm hoping to kind of tag along for some of that and, explore a little bit more of Vietnam again through slightly older eyes.
Oh, that sounds lovely. Vietnam's a big place.
Yeah.
A lot of places to go visit.
Yeah.
So that would be really cool. And something in the arts that you've always wanted to do, but you have yet to do.
So I've done quite a lot in the arts. So I used to direct and produce shows, like theatre shows. Probably to write my own show and put it on. So I have written some stuff, but when I was much, much younger, and I did put it on. I did show it. But yeah, I'd like to sort of properly write and produce a show.
Schizophrenia, one-man show. Okay. What does retirement look like to you?
Traveling with my family. So hopefully we'll have kids someday, and being able to travel and explore the world with my husband and my kids and my dog. I think that would be retirement.
And last question of the questionnaire is, how do you want to be remembered? What's your legacy?
Oh God, these are questions. Tough questions. I should have prepared a bit more for them. What do I want my legacy to be? I want to say, it sounds a bit boring, but that she was kind but impactful. Does that make sense? Like, that I was kind to people around me. That was, a nice person to be around, but I also implemented some sort of change through that kindness rather than, I think that's what I want.
Okay. Well, that marks the the end of the questionnaire. Thank you so much.
Sorry, I wasn't very quick on the quickfire questions.
It's fine. It's fine. Look, it's a podcast. It's not meant to be quick. Like, if you're looking for a quick thing, seriously, you're on TikTok. Okay. That's
there we
about
go.
it. But if you're listening to this, I thank you for listening all the way to the end or watching this. If it does make it to YouTube, that is. It really depends. But it's been great doing this face to face. The energy is so much better. I get to be close to people again. The weirdest thing of doing a podcast remotely, it's just it's so difficult to connect.
Yeah, I bet. Because there's so much communication done through non-verbal communication, sort of facial expression, body language. And I'm for those that are listening won't realise this, but I'm a very expressive person with my hands. So if anyone on the video, they'll probably notice that I wave my hands around a lot. But that kind of adds to that energy and that sort of vibe in the room and makes it a lot more fun.
Well, definitely, definitely. So that marks the end of the Epic podcast. So do catch us again on the next one. But if you want, please check out Evexia Collective. And where can they find all of this, by the way?
So our website is www.evexiagym.com. We are changing it to evexiacollective.com. So if you can't find it on gym.com, then check out evexiacollective.com. Otherwise, LinkedIn, there's Evexia Collective there. Instagram, evexia.collective.
Yep. And I'll also be dropping the LinkedIn bio into the video description as well.
Perfect.
So you can connect with Rebecca if you are keen to find out a little bit more and be part of the overall focus group testing and just development of this wonderful mental fitness gym that's going to help you out. Okay, with that, we'll see you next time on the Epic Podcast. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Oh, that was great. Thank you. That was so much
really
fun.
fun.
That was so much fun.